I was 16 the first time I realized just how breakable I was to my own family. My name's Emma, and back then I thought our house was just a place with unspoken rules. You grow up thinking you can trust the people under your roof. Your mom, your dad, your brother. That even if things weren't picture perfect, family was supposed to be the frame that held you steady. I wasn't a fool, not entirely, but I definitely wasn't ready for the night everything shattered. From the outside we looked like a magazine cover. My father, Robert, was this imposing figure, all booming voice and ironclad opinions. He believed in perfection, though the love part of his tough love always felt conditional. My mother, Susan, was quieter, the gentle hand that smoothed over all the cracks. She was the buffer. My older brother, Ryan, was 18 and knew how to work the system like a master. He was the golden child, destined for greatness. And then there was me, 16, the artist, the quiet one. I didn't make waves. I really tried to just blend into the wallpaper, but that only made me the perfect canvas for blame. Ryan and I used to be close. We'd hide in the attic and draw for hours, making up worlds where we were the heroes. But somewhere around the time Ryan realized his charm was a currency, things changed. He learned he could get away with anything as long as he had a convincing story. And my dad, God, he bought every word. Ryan could tell the most elaborate lie and walk away with a proud pat on the back, while I got interrogated for things I never even thought of doing. The incident that broke me started, fittingly, with something breaking. It was my dad's prized Community Leadership Award, a hideous glass eagle he kept on the mantel. I'd just gotten home from school, dropped my art portfolio in my room, and was heading to the kitchen when I heard my dad's roar from the living room. Not just calling my name but tearing it apart. "Emma, get in here now." My stomach turned to ice. I hadn't done anything. I ran through a mental checklist. Did I leave my paints out? Forget a chore? I walked in, my heart hammering against my ribs. My dad was standing there, face turning a deep shade of red, arms crossed. Ryan was on the sofa, staring at the floor, perfecting the role of the innocent bystander. And on the hardwood, the glass eagle lay in 1,000 glittering pieces. "You think I'm an idiot?" Dad snarled the second he saw me. "Ryan told me everything. You knocked this over and just walked away." My jaw fell open. "What? Oh, I just got home." "Don't you dare lie to me," he boomed. "He saw you. Reckless as always. You slammed your bag down and didn't even care." I looked at Ryan, pleading with my eyes. "That's not true." I went straight to my room. Ryan wouldn't meet my gaze. He just bit his lip, playing the part of the reluctant witness, the victim of my carelessness. I turned back to my dad, my voice shaking. "I swear I didn't do it." "Of course you did," he barked. "You're always lost in your own little world, never paying attention." I just stood there, speechless, as he sentenced me to my room for the rest of the weekend. As I turned to leave, I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible smirk on Ryan's face before it vanished. That night, alone in my room, the silence was deafening. I stared at my own reflection in the dark window and wondered if they were right. Was I that careless? Did I do it and just forget? That was the heaviest part of being the scapegoat. After a while, you start to believe you deserve the blame. It wasn't just the shattered trophy. That was just the loudest crash in a long, quiet history of things breaking. I spent years trying to make sense of the pattern. A dent in the car door, a lost $20 bill from Mom's purse, a forgotten promise that left me waiting alone for a ride. Each time, Ryan had a story that was smooth, plausible, and painted me as forgetful, clumsy, or selfish. And my mom, Susan, she would just sigh and tell me to let it go. "He doesn't mean it, Emma," she'd say, her eyes pleading for peace. "It's just not worth the fight." But it was. It was worth the fight. I just didn't know I was the only one in the ring. The real escalation, the moment that pushed me out of the frame completely, happened about a month later. Dad had left $400 in an envelope on his desk, money for a deposit on a new company car. The next morning it was gone. I came downstairs for breakfast and walked right into an ambush. Dad was pacing, his face a thundercloud. Mom was wringing her hands by the sink. And Ryan was sitting at the table looking deeply concerned. "Where is it?" Dad demanded the moment I walked in. I froze, my hands still on the banister. "Where is what?" "Don't play dumb with me." "The $400 from my office." A cold dread washed over me because I just knew how this would go. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice barely a whisper. That's when Ryan spoke up, his tone dripping with fake reluctance. "Dad, I didn't want to say anything, But I overheard Emma on the phone with Olivia last night. She was talking about that new camera lens she wanted, saying she was just a few $100s short. I stared at him, my blood running cold. It was the perfect lie. I had been saving for that lens for 6 months and everyone knew it. That's not true, I stammered, looking from my dad to my mom. Ryan, why would you say that? You think I'm stupid? Dad roared, taking a step toward me. You think I wouldn't connect the dots? My money goes missing the same week you're suddenly close to buying a $500 piece of equipment. I've been saving my own money. I didn't touch yours. I yelled back, tears starting to well in my eyes. Enough, he shouted, his voice shaking the whole house. I've had it with the lies, the carelessness, the disrespect. You are no longer welcome in this house. The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. I looked at my mom, my last hope, but she just stared at the floor, her silence a deeper betrayal than his anger. He pointed to the door. Get out. Now. And just like that, I was homeless. I grabbed my school bag, my jacket, and walked out the front door, leaving the perfect family portrait behind me. As I walked down the street, I didn't cry. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean of every last bit of hope that they would ever see me. Really see me. The first person I called was Olivia. She didn't even wait for me to finish explaining before she said, "Pie house." No. Mom's making lasagna. That night, sleeping on their pull-out sofa, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like fabric softener instead of stale disappointment, was the first time I felt safe in weeks. Olivia's parents didn't grill me with questions. They just gave me food, a place to sleep, and the quiet understanding that I was welcome, no strings attached. It was a kindness so simple it almost made me cry. But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I was 16 and I was on my own. I had to build something for myself, something that couldn't be taken away. My first mission was a job. I spent the next few days walking up and down Main Street, filling out applications at every shop with a help wanted sign. Most places looked at me, a 16-year-old with no experience and a shaky home address, and gave me a polite no. I was starting to lose hope when I pushed open the door to a little coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat. It was called The Daily Grind. The air inside was warm and smelled like coffee beans and cinnamon. Soft jazz played from a corner speaker. The walls were covered in local art, real art, the kind you could see the brushstrokes in. Felt as real. It was the complete opposite of my house, which was all beige walls and soulless, perfectly arranged furniture. A woman with kind eyes and streaks of silver in her curly hair was wiping down the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked, her smile genuine. "Hi," I said, my voice a little shaky. "I was wondering if you were hiring." I handed her my hastily filled out application. She took it and glanced down, her eyes lingering on the address line I'd left blank. She didn't ask. Instead, she looked up at my face, then at the sketchbook peeking out of my backpack. "You an artist?" she asked. I nodded. "I try to be." "I'm Sharon," she said, extending a hand. "I own the place." We talked for a while. Not like a job interview, just a conversation. She asked me about my art, what I liked to draw. I told her about my dream of going to art school. She listened, really listened in a way my own parents never had. She saw the exhaustion in my eyes, but she also saw the spark underneath it. She didn't see a problem child or a thief. She saw a kid who needed a chance. After about 20 minutes, she folded my application and set it on the counter. "Can you start Monday?" she asked. "I need someone to open up with me. 6 a.m. sharp." A wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled my knees washed over me. "Yes," I said, a real smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "Yes, I can." I walked out of the Daily Grind that day with more than just a job. I had a place to be. A purpose. I had a small, warm corner of the world that felt like it might just maybe want me in it. Months flew by in a blur of steam wands and sketch pads. Life settled into a new rhythm. I'd wake up before dawn, walk to the Daily Grind, and spend the morning with Sharon, learning the difference between a latte and a cappuccino. After school, I'd come back and do my homework in a corner booth, the comforting hum of the shop a constant soundtrack. I was saving every penny I made, tucking it away in an envelope hidden under my mattress at Olivia's house. But more than the money, I was rebuilding myself. My art changed. The timid, hesitant lines in my sketchbook grew bolder. I started drawing the people in the coffee shop, capturing their quiet moments. My anger and confusion started to find a voice on the page, transforming into something powerful, something true. Sharon became more than a boss, she was a mentor. She'd look over my shoulder at my drawings and offer quiet encouragement. One afternoon, after a particularly hard day where a wave of homesickness hit me out of nowhere, I finally told her everything. The trophy, the stolen money, the golden child, and the scapegoat. I expected pity, but Sharon just nodded slowly, a look of profound understanding on her face. "You know," she said, pouring me a cup of tea, "what you're describing is a classic narcissistic family system." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. She explained it all. How in some families children are assigned roles. One is the golden child who can do no wrong and carries all the family's hopes. The other is the scapegoat who carries all the family's problems. The scapegoat is the built-in excuse for everything that goes wrong. "It was never about you, Emma," she said softly. "It wasn't about the trophy or the money. It was about the roles. Your brother needed a villain so he could be the hero. Your parents needed someone to blame so they wouldn't have to look at the real cracks in their perfect family." Hearing her put a name to the invisible poison I'd been living with my whole life was liberating. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't broken or bad or careless. I was just a girl who had been cast in a role she never auditioned for. That conversation changed everything. My lingering self-doubt burned away, replaced by a cold, clear determination. My art became my focus, my weapon. I wasn't just drawing anymore. I was telling my story. The criminal twist, the final piece of the puzzle, fell into my lap by accident. I was at Olivia's house one night, helping her research colleges online. She was complaining about all the extracurriculars required. "Look at this guy," she said, pointing to a profile on a university forum. "President of the student body, captain of the debate team, and get this, founder of a nonprofit called Youth for Tomorrow." I leaned in closer. The profile picture was Ryan. I felt my stomach clench. He'd been bragging about that nonprofit for months, how it connected at-risk teens with mentors. My parents were so proud. Just for the hell of it, I typed Youth for Tomorrow into a search engine. Nothing. I tried a national nonprofit database. Still nothing. My heart started to beat faster. I dug deeper, searching business registries, social media, anything. There were no articles, no website, no photos, no registered charity number. There was nothing. The entire organization, the cornerstone of his college applications, the very thing that made him the perfect golden child, was a complete and total fabrication. It didn't exist. Armed with a truth that felt heavier and sharper than any broken piece of glass, I knew I couldn't just confront them. A private fight would just turn into more denial, more gaslighting. I needed a stage. I needed witnesses. A few weeks later, I saw a flyer at the coffee shop for the annual City Arts Gala, a prestigious competition with a $10,000 grand prize. I knew my family would be there. My father was on the board of one of the corporate sponsors. It was the perfect trap. I spent every spare moment on my entry. It was a large canvas, a triptych. The first panel depicted a small, shadowy figure being crushed under the weight of a giant, gleaming gold trophy. The middle panel showed the same figure being pushed out of a brightly lit doorway into a storm. And the final panel showed her alone, but standing tall, painting her own light onto a dark canvas. I called it, the echo in the frame. The night of the gala, I felt a strange calm. I saw my family across the crowded room, schmoozing and smiling, my father holding court while Ryan stood beside him, the perfect son. They didn't even notice me. When they announced the winner, my name echoed through the hall. "Emma," the announcer said, followed by my last name, the one I still shared with them. I saw my father's head whip around, his face a mask of confusion. My mother looked shocked. Ryan just looked pale. I walked onto the stage, my heart hammering but my hands steady. I accepted the award and the oversized check. I stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you," I began, my voice clear and strong. "This piece is about authenticity. It's about the stories we tell ourselves and the roles we're forced to play. It's about finding your own voice even when you're told to be silent." I paused, looking directly at my family. "And in the spirit of authenticity, I can't accept this money for myself." I held up the check. "There are kids in this city who need real help, not performative charity. That's why I'm donating the entire $10,000 prize to the Downtown Youth Center, a real organization that does real work." The room erupted in applause. My father's face was purple with rage. Ryan looked like he was going to be sick. The confrontation happened later in a quiet hallway away from the crowd. "How dare you?" my father seethed, his voice a low growl. "You did this to humiliate us." "No," I said calmly. "I did this to tell the truth. Something you were never interested in." Ryan finally found his voice. "You ruined everything. You built your future on a lie, Ryan. It was ruined before I ever picked up a paintbrush." But the final blow, the one that truly shattered everything, came from my mother. She stood there, tears streaming down her face. "Emma, please," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Then she looked at my father and my brother, her voice trembling but firm. "I knew," she said. "I knew Ryan took the money. I found the empty envelope in his trash can. I was just too afraid to say anything." The silence that followed was the sound of a family finally, irrevocably breaking apart. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. An article in the local paper praised the powerful statement made by a young artist, and a small sidebar mentioned Ryan's nonprofit couldn't be verified. That was all it took. The university he was planning to attend launched an investigation. Within 2 weeks, his acceptance was rescinded. My father's business associates, the same men he'd been laughing with at the gala, started keeping their distance. Public image was everything to him, and I had publicly tarnished it with the one thing he couldn't control: the truth. A week later, my mom called and asked me to meet them. I agreed, but on my terms. Not at their house, but at a neutral space, a quiet park bench. When I arrived, they looked smaller somehow, stripped of their power and prestige. My dad, for the first time, didn't seem so tall. Ryan wouldn't look at me. It was my mother who spoke first. "We're sorry, Emma," she said, the words sounding hollow. "We made mistakes." My father grunted. "Your brother was wrong, but you didn't have to handle it that way. You tore this family apart." I just looked at him, no anger left, only a profound sense of clarity. "This family was already apart," I said. "You just didn't want anyone to see the pieces. I wasn't a daughter, I was a role. I was the scapegoat. And Ryan was the golden child. None of it was real." Ryan finally looked up, his eyes red. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I never meant for." "It doesn't matter what you meant," I said, not unkindly. "It only matters what you did. And what you all did was teach me that I couldn't rely on you. So I learned to rely on myself." I stood up. They thought this meeting was about reconciliation, about finding a way to glue the family back together. But for me, it was a farewell. "I don't hate you," I told them, and I was surprised to find that it was true. "But I can't be that person for you anymore. I won't be your villain. I won't be your victim. I'm just me. And I have to go live my own life now." I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look back. There were no tears, no dramatic final words, just the quiet sound of my footsteps on the gravel path, walking toward my own future. That afternoon, I signed the lease on a small studio apartment above a flower shop, just a few blocks from the daily grind. I paid the deposit with the first paycheck from a gallery that had offered to display more of my work. As I stood in the empty room, sunlight streaming through the large window, I didn't feel sad or angry. I felt light. I felt peaceful. I had walked out of a house built on lies and into a space that was entirely my own. The echo in the frame had finally gone silent, replaced by the sound of my own voice, ready to tell my own story. I was finally free.